Hey, this is Raymond. You're watching RPAD TV 3000. My very special guest today is Paul Semel, veteran video game journalist, a dear friend, and a guy that's full of awesome celebrity stories. What's going on, Paul? How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Nice to be back. Thank you for having me again.
How are things in LA?
LA is good. The breakfast burritos are still flowing like wine.
Yes.
The Korean tacos are still a thing.
You get any new toys or anything interesting lately?
No, nothing really. Can't think of anything. Although, yeah, just lots of books. But
I got a new toy.
obviously, you did.
I want to show you.
Oh yes. Ooh. Om Nam Shabai. Om Nam Shabai. Om Nam Shabai.
Paul betrayed Shiva. Prepare to meet Kali in hell.
I used to love. Did you ever play the Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom arcade game?
Loved that game.
That game was
Fantastic.
so much fun, and I'm always like boggled that they never tried to bring it back in some. I don't know how, but like
I'm sure there must be an emulator or something.
maybe I don't know. But I just remember like that game was so great. And
So for the people tuning in live and for the people that are watching the replay, Paul and I are going to talk about Thor, Love and Thunder, the latest movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But before we get to that, I did want to ask you, one of my goals with this video podcast is to immortalize stories of my friends, and you have some of the best ones.
Okay.
You've interviewed tons of celebrities. One of my favorite stories of yours has something to do with Gary Busey, a powdery substance, a dog, and a.
Oh yes.
So
Gary Busey snorting cocaine off his dog story.
Okay, let's call it that.
Yeah.
So tell the people out there about Gary Busey and the cocaine brush.
So many years ago, I used to write for Maxim. And they asked me to interview Gary Busey. So I went to Gary's house in Malibu. And one of the questions that my editor had given me that he wanted me to ask was, what's the weirdest thing that Gary'd ever snorted cocaine off of? Now, Gary's well known for his cocaine use,
Yes.
or abuse, as the case may be. And during the interview, I asked him that, and he was kind of like, I don't know, a knife maybe? That's dumb. And I was like, okay. And I didn't think much of it. So a couple of days later, I get a phone call from the publicist. And she says, hey, you remember how like you asked Gary about the weirdest thing he snorted cocaine off of? And I thought for sure she was going to be like, you got to cut that question out. We don't want that in there. And I was like, okay, yeah, I remember. And she goes, yeah, Gary has a better answer for you. Which, if you know anything about celebrities and celebrity publicists, you know the idea of a publicist calling you up with a better story about the client behaving badly is just weird unto itself. And so I was like, okay. And I get on the phone with Gary, and he goes, yeah, so one time I came in the house, it had been raining, and I had this like slicker on, and when I took it off, I had forgotten that there was a bindle of cocaine in the pocket, and it fell out, hit the kitchen floor, and broke. Okay, not good. And he goes, and right then, my dog walked in and started rolling around in it. And he goes, so I grabbed the dog, and I started combing her fur. I think it was a her. And as I did it, I would snort the cocaine off the comb. And then Gary says, and let me tell you, that's not a good taste because you're not just getting the cocaine, you're getting dirt, fleas, and yeah.
And now that story is here on the internet forever.
Well, the funny thing is, years later, I was at an event for, there's a video game, Saints Row, one of the Saints Row games. And we're all at this event, and they had gotten Gary to do the intro to like the world premiere of the trailer or something like that. And we were all like, oh my God, Gary Busey's going to be in the game. This is insane. And I was sitting there talking to people, including our mutual friend, Chris Kohler, who used to be at Wired.
Right.
And I happened to tell Chris this story. 2 days later, Chris calls me up and he goes, or emails me, and he's like, hey, can I include your cocaine Gary Busey story in my Wired story? And I was like, sure. So that story wound up in like Wired, and yeah.
Which brings us to Thor: Love and Thunder.
Yes.
So interesting movie for Thor and for Chris Hemsworth. I believe he is now third in most appearances in the MCU, behind Iron Man and Captain America. Not including Nick Fury. I'm just including the majors.
Well, he has the most number of solo movies.
He has the most solo movies at 4, right? But I think Captain America has 11 appearances, Iron Man has 10, and Thor now has 9.
Oh.
And he'll have more. Whereas the other guys have none. Yes. So he will become the guy.
Well, they could always bring Cap back.
Sure.
I mean, as an old, they could bring the person back. I mean, he can't really be Captain America, but he could be, old Cap.
I mean, they could do whatever now that they have the multiverse and time travel. Like there are no rules anymore.
Right. That's right.
But those are the Thor stats. Now, why don't you give a 2-minute review on Thor: Love and Thunder? Sum up what you thought of it.
Okay. It is very much in the vein of Ragnarok, in the sense of being one of the silly Marvel movies as opposed to the serious Marvel movies like Thor and Dark World. And because of that, it wasn't one of my favorites, but I would say it's less than Ragnarok. But then again, I didn't really like Ragnarok as much the first time I saw it. And the more I saw it, the more I got into it. In fact, I'm glad that TBS shows it every 20 minutes because because of that, I've gotten much more into it. And
why do you think that is?
I don't know. I know why I got more into Ragnarok, because I think I was just put off by Ragnarok being so weird. And the other thing, and this is a big thing that I did like in Love and Thunder, is I really love Tessa Thompson's character.
Yes. And
the more I saw her in Ragnarok, the more I got into her and thus that movie.
Okay.
And so I think that's why. So yeah, I mean, I really like this movie. I don't agree with people who think it's too silly, and I certainly don't agree with the people who think it's a kids movie.
I've never heard that.
Oh yeah, that's the kind of the criticism that I've heard is it's too silly. It feels like a kids movie. I don't know if they actually mean and I don't agree. I don't agree with that, and not just because he shows butt cheeks.
The silly thing I understand. I don't agree with. I just love Taika Waititi's humor. It's just so goofy.
You have to it is very Taika, even more so than I think Ragnarok. And
oh yeah, definitely.
If you don't like his kind of style, then you will not like this movie.
I mean, for better or worse, they let him just have at it with Love and Thunder, where there was some restraint in Ragnarok, which I think made for a better movie. Maybe he could have used some of that in Love and Thunder, but I will give you my bite-sized review of Thor: Love and Thunder. It is definitely not one of the best Marvel movies, but it might be the most rewatchable. Huh. It's just fun. There's so many silly, funny, goofy bits that I can watch anytime.
Right.
I can enjoy it when I'm paying close attention. I can enjoy it while it's playing in the background. For me, it's up there as being intensely rewatchable. Whereas something like, I always come back to The Winter Soldier, which I think is top 3 of the best Marvel movies.
Right.
It's not something I could watch all the time because it's kind of heavy.
I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that. Because that's another one of those movies that's on TBS every 20 minutes. And I don't find myself watching that one, except for the scene where they first get on the boat it's one of my favorite scenes in any Marvel movie is that Captain America jumps out of the plane, he gets on the boat, and basically runs the length of the boat, beating the crap out of everybody in his way. And then Black Widow shows up and she's like, what about that girl in accounting? Like, right, picking up where their conversation left off. Like, that whole scene, especially with the music, just is one of the best things they've ever done. It's one of the best action scenes I've ever seen in a movie. Like, that I can watch over and over again, but the rest of it, like, and again, I'm with you, it's one of the best Marvel movies, but it's not the most effortless.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Now, for anyone watching live, feel free to add comments, ask questions. We love it when you participate. Now, let us move on. What were your favorite aspects of Love and Thunder?
Well, I mentioned Tessa Thompson, and she was certainly like one of them. I mean, my favorite scene in the whole movie was right after Jane's all upset and she breaks the sink, and then Tessa shows up. And they have this really funny exchange where Tessa's like whipping out weapons, and then she whips out this thing, and Jane's like, a grenade? And she's like, no, it's a speaker. And she hits a button, and the Mary J. Blige song comes on. I love that part. I love the part when they're in the city of the gods, and Tessa and Jane are talking. All the stuff with Tessa and Jane was really, really good.
Yeah.
There's another scene where it's Tessa, Jane, Thor, and they're standing there. And they're talking, and they're like, we have to go do this. And Jane is like, yeah, let's go ride the rainbow. And then she takes off. And then Tessa and Thor have a whole conversation about how she's doing as Thor. I thought that was really, really good. I also really liked Christian Bale. I mean,
yes,
he's a really good actor, but he really, really got weird in this movie. And just delightfully unhinged.
Arnold Jr.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm weird, but those goats consistently crack me up. I do want to talk about the goats specifically a little bit later.
Okay, we'll get to the goats, but you're not alone.
You are definitely not alone.
And you are weird, but that's okay. We like weird.
I don't know you well enough. I would like to, so stick around and leave more comments, and we can find out if you're weird.
Yeah.
For me, I love the New Zealand sense of humor. The first time I saw Taika Waititi, I thought he sucked because the Green Lantern movie did actually suck. But the second time I saw him was What We Do in the Shadows, and that's one of my favorite films ever. Yeah. And from then on, I just became a tremendous fan of his. I love his writing, love his directing. There were some surprises for me in this movie. When I think of a Taika Waititi movie, I think of the humor. I think of his characterization, the writing. I do not think of him as a visual director. So when they did that stuff in the Shadow World, I thought that was very cool. It was really striking, really changed the tone of the movie, gave it a lot of weight. Was not expecting that at all. So,
and it was a very striking version of black and white.
Yes.
I would have to put up a picture of it for you to see, but it's not like they just turned off the color on the camera. There's something, it's almost silver and black in a way. And I think that worked really, really well.
By the way, I need to tell you that whenever you say Tessa Thompson, I want to call her Tesla Thompson. It was a gag in Between Two Ferns when Zach Galifianakis kept calling her that. And when people say Omnipotent City, I keep thinking, Impotent City, what?
Oh, right. There was something else I wanted to mention that I really, really liked that I keep forgetting about. I love the way the hammer worked in this. How it was usually as it normally is, it's a hammer, but then she could also shoot it out, the pieces out.
Yeah.
And hit people with that, and then it would come back and be still solid. I thought that was really well done.
That was very cool. We have a question from Carlos. Are you sad that Hera was not shown in Omnipotent City? I don't know. I kind of like that the Greek Roman pantheon was restricted to Zeus, because I love that performance. I love the Greek accent that he did.
Right.
He just reminded me of we grew up in the East Coast, so there's a lot of Greek diners.
Right.
To me, he sounds like an old diner owner. So I'm glad that Hera wasn't part of it. I actually worship Hera, maybe one day a week. Who would I
Well,
call
first of
Hera?
all, you didn't see everybody that was in the city because there
Yeah.
was just a ton of people. And also, like, the implication is that she's dead, that she got beat up by the guy from the Dio cover, you know. So
Arnold comes back with Zeus and Roy Kent. Yes, this is also a very important part, which we will get to later. You brought
okay.
up two of our segments. Arnold's on it. He's got it going on. But let's talk about Russell Crowe for a second.
Right.
I thought he was hilarious in that role.
Yeah. Yeah. He was really good. And I saw an interview with Taika where he said that they had him do the scenes both in an English accent
Right.
and in the Greek accent. And because they were thinking like at first that the Greek accent was too much. And then but everybody who saw the scene, editors and whatnot, they were just like, no, the Greek is definitely the way to go.
Right. And he said it might offend actual Greek people if he were speaking in Old English.
Yeah, they also said something about, I guess Zeus had been there. Somebody had been in a movie where Sir Lawrence Olivier had played Zeus.
Yeah, Clash of the Titans.
Clash of the Titans, that's what it was. And he used an English accent in that. And so that was the English accent they went for. They went for,
right.
Something like that. Like they didn't go for like a Cockney accent, obviously, which would have been really weird.
Oh,
but,
yeah. In the comics, they had Thor speaking in Old English using verily and thee and thy,
right.
And which does not make sense for a Scandinavian god, but
right.
Whatever. Oh, by the way, Carlos asked before this taping why we're not doing this on Thor's Day, why we're doing this on Wednesday. And I actually did want to stream it on Thor's Day, but I'm going out with a very special girl. And yeah, that took precedent.
Is it Tessa Thompson?
No, it is not Tesla Thompson. That would have been cool.
Yeah.
Now, Christian Bale, he brought up earlier.
Yes.
That was one of the things that I liked and didn't like about the movie. The character Gore, I don't think he had enough time. In the comics, he's been in Thor's life from like the 9th century and even in future storylines. So they have a relationship that spans literally thousands of years.
Right.
And he's literally killed thousands of gods. And there's no way to do that in a 2-hour and whatever movie. You don't get the sense of his anger, how bad the destruction he's caused over thousands of years. In the comics, he almost killed Thor, and in the 9th century storylines.
Right.
But I mean, Christian Bale is just so good that he made the little he had to work with work, and he did it so well. But I don't think the character had as much gravitas as it should have had. But Christian Bale rocked what he did.
The one thing I thought when I was watching him, and I almost don't want to say this because I don't want to ruin things for people, is he kind of reminded me of Marilyn Manson. And I really wondered if there had been a joke to that effect in the movie at some point, and then they cut it out because of the stuff that's going on with Marilyn and women and whatnot, but he did. I thought he was really good. I get your point though about the weight of the moment, but I think that I think they managed to work around that. I mean, I don't know how. I mean, because how do you do? Because that's the thing. You're talking about
right
60 years of comics. You can't you have to make certain changes.
No, I totally understand, and you're right. Carlos says yes, needed more god butchery. I will allow that as a word. I think it totally is.
God butchery.
God butchery. This was the first Thor movie without Loki. Did you miss him?
No. I mean, I love Loki and I love Tom Hiddleston playing Loki.
Yeah.
But to shoehorn him in there would have been weird. Although there was a point where I thought oh, maybe that's not Zeus, maybe that's Loki. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's always that aspect of things, but like, I kind of was okay without him. Kind of like the idea that Thor still thinks that like Loki is dead.
Right.
Hence the giant back tattoo.
Yes.
You know, and the thing is, we know that Loki is still technically around because they're doing Loki season 2, so he could turn up again in the movies at some point.
Did you think that you needed a love triangle between Thor, his axe, and his hammer?
That's an interesting way to put that.
Well, that's what it was.
I mean, yeah, that stuff was very funny, and the idea that the axe could get jealous of the hammer and you know the euphemisms that come into that that was one of those things. Like, you can tell that the guys and the people in the writers' room working on that movie like had a lot of fun, like, and probably had to cut a bunch of that stuff out because it was like, because it would have been like an hour and a half long movie, you know.
In an hour and just those three.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I love that stuff. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, that was very funny.
Let me ask you this, and let me ask everyone watching live: would you rather have Mjolnir or Stormbreaker, and why?
I mean, the only advantage that Stormbreaker has is that it can summon the Bifrost.
It's a pretty big advantage.
Yeah, that's a big advantage because if you need to get around. But otherwise, I think I'd go classic, especially if it was the original, not broken. You know.
Yeah, but the broken version can do all those cool shard.
It can, but I don't know. I'm gonna kick it old school because I'm an old fool.
Okay, I like it. I'll go with Stormbreaker myself because I love to travel, but I don't like the act of getting to one place to another.
Right.
I love going to new places.
Yeah,
different
places. I would think that it's not going to really work well. Like if you wanted to go to Vegas to LA and back.
Why not? You just
I guess you could. I don't know.
Didn't he do that in What If? He was, because that was in Vegas.
Oh yeah, I think he did do that. Now that you mention it.
Carlos voted for Stormbreaker because it can take down Titans. That's true.
True.
You can't. It'd be very hard to chop a Titan's head off with a hammer.
True, but you could bash his skull in with it.
You could, yeah, the blunt force that would work.
Yeah.
Okay, so getting back to Arnold's point, one of the big stars of the program were the goats.
Right.
People love the screaming goats.
Yes.
I thought it was funny. I didn't expect it to be as big a deal with some fans as it was.
Yeah.
Maybe because I originally saw the screaming goats, and so Taika got this idea. Some fans did a remix of a Taylor Swift song, "I Knew You Were Trouble," and they had her chorus alternating with the screaming goats. So I knew it for a long time because of that. So when I saw it in the movies, that was the first thing I thought of, and then I read after I saw it that Taylor Swift was the inspiration for the goats.
Yeah.
What did you make of the goats, and are you surprised that they're so meme worthy?
I'm not surprised. The least bit surprised it's meme worthy because it's just a funny sound.
Yes,
and I understand why people had a problem with how much of it was in the movie, because if you hate that sound, obviously, or you don't think it's that funny of a joke. But I did think it was funny, and especially when it would be times like they would pull the camera back and like you'd see the ship moving, and then all of a sudden like you'd hear the goat from a distance. Like that kind of stuff was really funny. And the one part, I think I forget what the actual line is, but there's a part where somebody says something about eating the goats and the goats just stop.
Yeah. When they were on the Guardian ship.
Yeah.
I think it was Drax who said, I don't know, somebody said something about eating their meat.
Yeah.
And then
goat stew or something like that. And they were like, it was very abrupt and really well done. But yeah, that was one of those things where I could definitely see people being annoyed. Like there's a scene when they're in the God City and they see this little bun god.
Bow.
Wow. Which I don't know if that's a reference to something that I just missed because I'm middle-aged or
That is
whatever.
the word for those kinds of buns, bow.
Okay. Yeah. Well, like that was one of those things where I was like, oh, that's really funny, but I could definitely see people being like, that's not funny. That's not a joke.
I don't know. It made me question my religion and want to convert to the god of buns. I love bow. The buns and the god.
Right.
It totally works for me.
Mm.
Now, were there any aspects of the movie that you did not like or you found lacking?
Yes. Okay. So as I mentioned, it was a bit too silly for me.
Okay.
But that didn't get away from me. But there was something, and I'm hesitant to mention it because it's not something I shouldn't blame this movie for it, because this movie is kind of the tipping point of it with me, because I've seen it in tons of other movies and it's starting to annoy me, which is this idea that the bad guy is suddenly going to have a change of heart in the last 2 seconds. You know, there's a scene at the very, very end, you know, the God Butcher has been trying to get to this place and he's killed all these people and done all these terrible things. And he's like, all gods must die. And then he gets there and he's like, yeah, I'm going to bring my kid back instead. And I kind of get annoyed by that. It seems very unsatisfying and like, it just, I don't know, it doesn't seem to work. And like, it's funny because I was thinking about it, like, because it happens like all the time in movies where like the bad guy suddenly has a change of heart and now he's gonna sacrifice himself to do good and whatever. And what's funny, because I wouldn't have thought of this back in 1983, but that's how Return of the Jedi ends.
Yeah.
And I remember like, and it's funny because I remember being like thinking like, wait, what? Like, why would he suddenly make this change? Now, if you go back and watch from the prequels, it makes a lot more sense. That's one of the things that not to go on a tangent here about the prequels, but if you watch the prequels and then watch the original trilogy, the fact that Darth Vader has that change of heart makes a lot more sense.
Yes.
But like, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. When I saw that in Thor, I was like, okay. Like in the moment I thought, oh, Jane is going to go in there first, beating Gore to the punch. And that's how she's going to cure her cancer and then be able to come back in future movies.
Right.
And even if they hadn't done that, there's all these other ways they could have done it. I mean, like Gore could have gone through the doorway and there's nothing there. Or Gore could have gone through the thing and been like, gods must die, and nothing happens. Because if you think about it, all those people that we call those gods, they're not gods. They
right.
call themselves gods. They're worshipped as gods by people who, you know, met them. You know, they're basically like super powered aliens who are worshipped as gods. But just because you call yourself a god doesn't mean you're a god. I mean, Kanye West calls himself a god. He's not a god.
Charlemagne the God. I found
Charlemagne the God
is not an actual god.
No, not an actual god. And really, if you think about it, neither is Thor. Neither is Zeus. They're just super powered aliens that other people worship. Now, they're gods with like a little g. But anyway, that sort of change of heart of his didn't really work for me.
I could see that. So
now,
for the
like what happened afterwards, like the all the stuff where Thor and the kid go off and they're going to beat the crap out of people for the next couple of years.
Yeah.
But it just, I don't know, that change of heart kind of thing that we see so often. I don't know if there's a name for that trope, but like by the time I got to it in Thor, I was like, this again.
So that's Chris Hemsworth's actual daughter, by the way,
Yes.
who played her. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Apparently, like all their kids were in the movies. Like Taika's kids are in the movies. Natalie's kids are in the movies.
Hemsworth's wife, Elena, what's her face from the Fast and
Pataki or
Furious?
something like that.
She played one of the wolf people in the movie. So it was a family affair,
Yeah.
quite literally.
Yeah.
Let's go back to some of the comments here. I figured the dumpling god wouldn't end up as trendy toys. Yes. Or it could be part of the snack bar at New Asgard next to the Infinity Cone stand. I love that New Asgard became a tourist trap.
Yeah.
And I loved how frustrated and unsatisfied Valkyrie looked having to
Right.
rule over that.
Yeah.
Carlos agrees with you that redeeming the villain is such an annoying thing in the MCU.
Yeah, and it's not even restricted to the MCU. I mean, you see it in
No.
like all kinds of movies. Like, you
Right.
know, the bad guy spends like, you know, 2 hours and like millions of dollars like to destroy the world, and then at the last minute he's like, nah, I'm gonna save it.
Mind.
Yeah.
Sorry. So in the comics, they did it a little bit differently. In the future, I believe, and I might be remembering this wrong. If anyone's read this, please leave a comment or correct me live. But he becomes so powerful that people start viewing him as a god himself. So he becomes the thing that he hates,
Right.
which leads to his downfall. Would that have worked better for you in the movie? In the movie, I mean, they didn't set it up this way, but is that better for you than the redemption story arc?
Maybe. I don't know, because I don't know where you go with it from there. Because
Well,
what if he
he
cut
just
his own head off?
He dies. Somebody,
Yeah.
the other guys kill him, and I think his past self or something comes and helps kill him.
All right, that would have gotten weird, but okay. Yeah, I think I would have been happier if either he'd gone through the doorway and there was nothing there, you know, as if to say somebody else had, you know, redeemed this one wish of infinities before, or if they had brought, you know, if they had used it to cure Jane's cancer. Although I get the sense that Natalie Portman probably doesn't want to have to do like a bunch of Thor movies.
Right.
Like I think she liked the idea. She seemed to have fun making this one from what I've seen. And I get the sense that she probably liked the idea of coming back and being Thor and not just being, you know, the girlfriend and whatnot.
Yes.
But like she probably was like, yeah, I think one is enough, you know, and that's fine.
So Carlos asks, would this Gore storyline be better if it were multiple films? Yes, but I don't think they would have given that villain in particular multiple films. I don't know if he's like a Thanos level guy that you can do that with. Would have worked fantastic in a series if you can stretch a story out over 6 to 10 episodes. But any more time to give him more depth and to give his story more weight would have been better.
Yeah.
So you agree?
Yeah, I mean they could have done something like showed that this all started like years ago, that he's been you know what I mean, like as if to say like, oh, he's been around for a really long time. And
right, you don't get that sense at all in the movie.
Like
seems like his daughter died, then 2 weeks later he's going after Thor.
Right. Yeah, like it all happened in the span of like a month and a half or something.
Yeah. Whereas in the comics, it's literally like 1,000 years, I think, between their meetings.
Right.
Interesting. You brought up Natalie Portman. I mean, we haven't spoken much about her, but this was a big return for her, coming back as Jane Foster and coming back as the mighty Thor.
Yeah.
I loved that character in the comics. Jason Aaron's Thor run.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. The work he did with Jane and with Thor and with Loki. Loved all his stuff.
Yeah. That in fact, it's funny because I remember thinking like at the time I wasn't as huge a fan of his Thor comics, and then this really landed for me like a lot. The thing, and I you know, again, it makes me wish that she had been stuck around, because I think I said this to you, we've talked about this before, like I would love to see her team up with, you know, female Hawkeye and Ms. Marvel and the woman whose name I never remember from Moon Knight, and you know, this sort of and She-Hulk, and do this whole like young Avengers kind of thing. But alas.
Now, it's one of the things people complained about, not just with this movie, but with Phase 4 in general, is that there isn't like a common narrative thread, or there doesn't seem to be one yet.
Right.
My thought is, who gives a shit? I mean, I enjoy these movies on their own. When Feige ties it all together, I think it'll be cool. I think he'll do it well, but it's, as a fan of comic books, not everything is connected. Our friend Chris Baker brought this up in another comment, that, you know, all these superheroes are doing their own thing, having their own adventures. They're being written in their own tones, and every now and then they get together in a crossover. Not everything has to be that.
Yeah, and it's funny because there's been people who've had sort of the opposite complaint, like, oh, everything, like, it's like that some of these things are not about the thing itself, it's about setting up the next thing and whatnot. But Kevin Feige, the guy, the sort of mastermind of all this stuff, did make a comment recently and address that issue, and he said, there is a point to this, and it'll make more sense at some point.
Right.
And I think I said in a comment to you, we were talking about the Eternals at one point, not in this conversation, but in an earlier one. And I was like, I don't know how this really works with the other things, but I trust the Feige, and I feel like at some point it's going to make sense. And that's the thing. I feel like a lot of this stuff, yeah, it's an interesting thing you have to balance. Like, how do I give Thor his own adventure unto its own for Thor fans, but also feed into the larger narrative? So
right, because you want to give the writers and directors their own chance to tell their individual story. But
right, well, that's interesting you bring that up, because one of the things I was thinking about with this movie is I wonder how much of that there is, how much conversation there is. Like, when they were doing Endgame, did they go to Taika and say, okay, what do you need us to set up for you for Thor? And what did they tell them we're going to need you to do? Because one of the things that was sort of, that I think some people have complained about with this movie is that the Guardians of the Galaxy are in it for like 5 seconds and then they leave. And like the question comes up, well, did Marvel set that up for Taika, and Taika just was like, no, I don't want to deal with that? Or did Taika be like, okay, that's an interesting idea, we're not going to stick with them the whole movie because they got their own movie to do?
right.
You know, like, how much of that conversation goes on behind the scenes? Like, because we know that Kevin Feige's planning all this stuff ahead, and I just don't know how much planning there is. Because I think, like, the guy who was going, Edgar Wright, who was going to write and direct Ant-Man, quit. And like, I think the reason that he quit was because, like, he felt like, well, there's all these things they're telling me I have to do, and I don't want to do them.
Right.
You know, so I don't know what the balance is there. Like, how much leeway you as a filmmaker get. Like, you know, I guess they give you like these bullet points and go, okay, look, this has to happen in this and this and this. Go nuts.
I'm sure these things are planned well in advance, and there's certain things they have to do and certain things they're flexible on. And some creators like Edgar Wright can't work in that way.
Right.
But I'm happy people like Taika can.
Yeah.
So Arnold says, I bet there is a common narrative. Audiences just won't piece it together until later. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true.
Carlos, why didn't Jane use It's Hammer Time? Because they didn't. So they have that scene where she whispers what her catchphrase would be.
Yeah.
And Taika said it's very much a nod to what Bill Murray whispers into Scarlett Johansson's ear in Lust and Translation.
Right.
Which nobody knows, but I always make up stupid shit whenever I watch. That's my favorite movie ever, by the way. So I watch it a lot.
Right.
But that scene, I always make up something like, hey, I think I left the iron on in the hotel. Can you go check that?
Your fly is open. You know, I always wonder about that. Like, I wonder if they actually did come up with something and whisper it, and it's going to be, you know, like in 30 years, they're going to like be, you know, it's going to be like 30 years from now that we're going to find out who Carly Simon's You're So Vain is about. Like,
one person did. She had an auction, a charity auction
Right.
for it, and then I think there was some tech executive. He won the rights to learn the secret on the condition that he not tell anyone.
Right.
And Carly told him who "You're So Vain" was written about, if it was a person or people.
Right.
We have a long comment here. Thor may have only joined the Guardians because they didn't know what was going on with James Gunn at the time.
That's a good point.
That's
because that wasn't that weird period.
He was canceled for like 3 minutes.
But it was long. It was like in the period where he was canceled, but everybody wanted him back. And people were speculating that they might be bringing him back. And then, of course, they did bring him back. So.
Have you gotten canceled this year at all?
Every week.
Because I remember you being very happy when Black History Month was over.
Yeah, thank you for putting that out there.
It's on the internet with your Gary Busey story forever.
Yeah, there we go.
you had your celebration there,
and now I'm canceled.
I mean, Natalie Portman? I thought looked amazing. She did well. Her a lot of people were raving about her arms,
right?
Which did look cool, but.
Yeah, she was really good. She's a really good actress anyway, and she's really good. And I thought she did a good job with the superhero stuff. I mean, like I said, I think she had a lot of fun making the movie and being in the movie and whatnot, And
same thing with Bale. He looked like, because whenever he's in a movie, I always think of his tantrum in Terminator.
Oh, right.
Where he's yelling at the sound guy.
Yeah.
So he looked like he was having a great time with this.
Yeah, but one of the things that somebody said, I don't remember who, somebody said that Taika really wants his sets to be fun. He wants people to have fun. He wants it to be a very, he needs it to be a professional environment, but he wants it to be, loose. He doesn't want to be like a taskmaster where you have to do everything exactly and this and that. Like, he's definitely open to improvisation and stuff like that. And I think, if you're Christian Bale and you're doing like serious movies, you probably don't always get that. So, you can't be goofy when you're playing, Dick Cheney, but, you're playing, Marilyn Manson, the God Butcher. You can it's like, here, dig into this.
It's so funny to think that Taika is doing this now. Like I love what we do in the shadows. I always think back to the bunch of vampires huddled around a computer looking at images of sunrises, as if they were watching Pornhub or something. He has a movie where Hitler is a kid's make-believe friend.
Oh God, yeah.
Jojo Rabbit.
Yeah, Jojo, that's a good movie.
That's a fantastic movie, I think. Yeah. And he's so wonderfully imaginative, and I love that they let him do Marvel stuff. And so when people complain about it being too silly, I'm like, well, you have so much to choose from now, content-wise, that you could watch Moon Knight and watch an insane superhero. You can watch.
Well, and that was one of the things he talked about early on when they started doing these movies is how are you going to have magic and science fiction in the same thing? Because you have Iron Man, who is like the tech guy, and then Thor is a god, and it's like fantasy. How are you going to mix these things? And they've managed to pull it off. I mean, even in the movies, like, some of the best movies they've done are the ones where all those people are interacting.
Yeah.
The Avengers movies and whatnot. So
let's talk about the post-credit scenes for a bit. We had one with Hercules starring Roy Kent.
Yeah.
He's here. He's there. He's every fucking where. Roy Kent is Hercules. What do you think of that role?
Okay. I'm normally not into in the comics when they bring other characters from other things into it. Like when they brought Frankenstein into DC or when they brought Hercules into Marvel. Like I always find that a little silly. Although oddly enough, I loved it when Alan Moore did League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. But then again, the conceit of that book was these popular literary heroes are real people and they happen to be teaming up. So it worked.
Hercules as a Marvel character has been around for decades.
Right, but like even like when I get to like I won't buy like a Hercules comic book. Like
Oh,
I don't care. Like you know what I mean? Or if he shows up
oh man.
like somewhere, I'm like, "Ugh, okay.
I think you're missing out.
Although weirdly, like I don't have a problem with Dracula being in there, and I never had a problem with Thor and the Norse gods being in there. So I don't know. Maybe it's like more of just a Hercules thing. I don't know.
So
But I also don't watch Ted Lasso, so like him showing up, I was like,
right.
like you know.
Well, I love the actor, love the character. I think you would love the actor as well. Brett Goldstein.
Is he the guy that people thought was AI?
Yes,
Okay.
and he plays this gruff character in Ted Lasso, but in real life he's this nerd that's obsessed with the Muppets. Yeah, like that
That's
dude
fantastic.
loves
I love
the
that.
Muppets.
Okay. He just won many points with me.
He has the chest hair for Hercules, but
Right.
in the comics, Hercules is more like how Thor is in the movies. You know, he's goofy. His comics have a lot of humor in them. His comics with Amadeus Cho, the Korean kid that was Hulk for a while.
Oh yeah.
Hilarious stuff. Like there's this one panel they always show where Amadeus is trying to infiltrate these goddesses and get info out of them.
Okay.
The scene is taking place in a bedroom, so it looks like he's trying to score with a girl. And then Hercules is just outside the window with this goofy thumbs up.
That's good. I like that.
And they just have such a fun dynamic together. Like the Greek goddesses thought they had like a classic Greek relationship of you know how ancient philosophers had little boys with them at all times for other purposes.
Yeah.
That's what they were up to. And so Amadeus got really mad. He's like, no, we're not. We're just friends. It's like,
yeah.
So it's interesting that those characters, he's very serious in the movie because Zeus wants the gods to be feared and respected again. So he's going to have his son. If he's playing like a Roy Kent type of character, it absolutely works if he wants to go serious. But when I think of comic books, Hercules, I think of, you know, goofy, fun humor kind of thing. But they already have that with Thor now. So you're redundant.
But the thing is they don't necessarily need Thor to be in the movie with Hercules. Like if the whole idea is people aren't respecting the gods anymore, then they can send Hercules back to Earth when Thor isn't there and have him mess things up or whatever, or send him, you know, to some other planet.
Right. But didn't Zeus say he wants people to see Thor fall from the sky or something like that, some line like that?
Maybe, but that doesn't necessarily mean Thor has to like appear. Like it could, you know, I mean, no, also we don't know where they're going with that, you know. There's like, you know.
Right. Speaking of
the idea is they could send Hercules to Earth thinking Thor's going to show up, but Thor is, you know, off somewhere else.
You know how they have that stinger, like, you know, whoever will be back, you know.
Right.
Like in late Miss Marvel just ended yesterday, and the stinger was Ms. Marvel will be back in the Marvels. So they had in Love and Thunder, it said Thor will be back, which wasn't in the cuts they seen and was a surprise to Taika, to Chris Hemsworth.
Right.
And Hemsworth allegedly, he said he asked Natalie Portman, are they talking about me or you? like who's coming back here? So where do you want
the kid?
The kid? More lone wolf and cub kind of thing?
Yeah. Little kid comes back. Or well, not the little. I don't know.
What do you want to see next from this franchise or this character?
I would really like it if we didn't see Thor for a while. Not in the rest of Phase 4, not in Phase 5, but that he comes back in the middle of Phase 6 so that he can be there for whatever the ending is. And I don't want him to sort of just suddenly show up at the end. You know, like I don't want it to be like the way Captain Marvel showed up at the end of Endgame to kind of blow through things. Like I'd like to see him show up earlier than that, but like I think we can leave him be for a while.
Right.
Like maybe to the point where the kid becomes kind of the new Mighty Thor rather, as a teenager, you know, like 10 years from now when that kid's grown up and been out there, you know, doing stuff, you know, maybe that could be like the way to do it. You know, I don't need to see Thor, like another Thor standalone movie, like in 3 years, you know.
Carlos says, I want to see King Thor. I was going to ask you, what version of Thor would you like to see? Something close to this version? Do you want Fat Thor to come back? Do you want All Father Thor, which is in the comics? Future Thor becomes the All Father.
I mean, that could be interesting. You know, it seems like I don't know. I mean, like when I think about the Thor movie, like the people that I want to see more of would have been Jane Foster and Valkyrie. You know, yeah. I'd like to see Valkyrie get out there and do some stuff. I mean, you know, it'd be interesting if she became the mighty Thor. Although I don't know how worthy she is.
Probably
she sort of, yeah. You know, she's kind of fun being not so worthy, but like, you know.
I wonder if in the comics, Jane dies, goes to Valhalla, but comes back as a Valkyrie.
Right.
So I don't know if they're going to do that. Probably
I don't know if they would do that because they call Tessa's character Valkyrie, so they have, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, in the comics, they kind of use that as an honorific, not a specific character.
Right. But I also think that in the comics, they were probably not expecting that character to take off the way it did. And that when it did, they were like, oh, crap, we had this whole plan. Now what do we do? You know, we have to like figure out a way to bring her back. Well, let's do this and then, you know, bring her right. Because it's comics. You can always bring people back. So.
Oh, here's a complaint that I liked, but some people did not. Korg using like a children's storytelling device throughout the movie, did it like 4 or 5 times. Like, this is the tale of the mighty Thor. And, you know.
I thought that was fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
And it fits that character.
I'm Korg. I'm made of rocks.
Korg. Yeah. Yeah. He's very funny. I was a little surprised they didn't kill him off when he got smashed. But I'm glad they didn't because you know, he's a good comic relief and a good thing. I love, by the way, the shot of Meek in a suit.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Just weirdness.
I love how Korg had a baby with a rock named Dwayne.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that was another funny thing that Korg, when he kept getting Jane's name wrong.
Your ex-girlfriend, Jodie Foster.
Yeah.
Jane Foster.
Yeah.
What was the other one that he got wrong? He called her
Jane Fonda.
Jane Fonda. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It would have been funny too if when he was doing that, they had gotten Jodie Foster and Jane Fonda to step in. You know what I mean? Like, because he's telling the story, and if he'd been like your girlfriend Jodie Foster, and like it's Jodie Foster actually in the outfit, but like
they could have done that with Loki because of the transformation kind of thing.
No, what I mean is, as he's telling the story, like he got it wrong. Like he was like it's Jodie Foster, and they showed Jodie Foster, but then it's not really.
What did you think of Matt Damon coming back to play the actor?
I like that part. I think that's funny. And it was really funny when they got, oh God, what is her name to play Hela?
Oh yeah, and her husband was in it too.
Yes, her husband was in it too. Yeah, that was really funny.
What's her name? I have to look that up.
Yeah, the woman from Gilmore Girls is who I always think of her as.
I think Melissa McCarthy.
Yeah.
I always go back to Bridesmaids for her.
Yeah, Bridesmaids. She's done a ton of stuff. I thought that was really funny, and yeah. Thank you, Zach Morris.
Zach Morris, thank you. We used your intro graphic today, and I'm going to use it as an outro. So thank you very much. Well,
good job, Zach.
Oh, cool. Paul liked it. So there's one.
Very Star Trek. Yeah.
So Zach, he says the effect you used for the dissolve reminds him of Star Trek teleportation. I think that's a compliment.
Yeah, that's definitely a compliment. It was good. The whole play within the movie thing is really funny, and it was a nice callback to what happened. And
here's an interesting comment. We may see multiple Thors in Loki too.
Right. Well, there were a bunch in the first season.
Right, but with all the different Lokis they had in the series, I think you can just more, they had Frog Thor,
right,
and Alligator Loki. You could do more
right.
animals, more goofy stuff.
Yeah, Beta Ray Bill, or as I think of him, Joe Campbell Thor.
I hate that character so much.
Yeah.
That's just fun. That's just I don't really hate Beta Ray Bill.
Yeah. He's one of the sillier characters.
Yes.
But, I'm still holding out hope for a Howard the Duck movie.
There was one.
I meant a good one. With Seth Green.
You know what? I don't hate that movie. I will rewatch it. Leah Thompson in her prime.
She wants to make a Howard the Duck movie.
No, I did not know that.
Yes, there was an interview with her about it, and she said that she wants to do it, like her directing it, but with like not the version of the character that she was in the movie with, but rather the one from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Uh-huh.
I mean, look, they got away with like a raccoon that talks. So.
What is the next Marvel movie, by the way? Is it Black Panther is next?
I don't know. I think there's one in November, but I don't remember if it's Black Panther.
Marvel's
it's not the Marvels. No, Marvels is like next year.
Yeah.
I want to say maybe you're right. It is Black Panther. And it's hard to keep track at this point. Especially because we haven't seen a trailer for anything.
Oh, Zach Morris says Black Panther, then Ant-Man.
Yeah, that would make sense.
It makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Quantumania is the Ant-Man movie.
Yeah. Quadrophenia.
Oh, we did not talk about music. You're a big Guns N' Roses fan.
Oh,
they used 4 tracks from Guns N' Roses.
Which is weird.
It makes me feel old that they're at that stage where...
No, it was weird because usually when you see a movie, they don't use multiple songs by the same artist. Unless it's like, Pink Floyd The Wall or something. So it was a little weird hearing them use that much Guns N' Roses. I did like that the kid started calling himself Axel.
Yes.
Which was funny. I didn't know kids liked Guns N' Roses, but okay. I mean...
What did they have? They had Sweet Child of Mine,
Paradise City, Welcome to the Jungle, and November Rain.
Yes.
The very end of November Rain at some point. So, they didn't go obscure with it. They didn't go to the spaghetti incident or
no Chinese Democracy.
No one's going to go to Chinese Democracy. Let's be honest. There's one person in the world that likes that album, and he's on it. So. And no, I don't mean Buckethead.
I love that they used that much Guns N' Roses and used it well. It totally fit into what they were doing.
It was funny to me at the very, very end in the credits that they used Dio. And I wish that had been in the regular movie because, it would just fit.
So the scene where Jane is dying and they're holding her in the water kind of thing after Christian Bale gives up.
Right.
So apparently that was filmed in a Best Buy parking lot, and Natalie Portman was really impressed by how visually striking that scene was. I thought it was cool. I don't know. I mean, there was so much going on. The Shadow World really took it for me visually. I thought that was my favorite stuff.
Yeah.
But that water scene was, that was kind of neat.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was a visually interesting movie for sure. I mean, they certainly had the budget to make it interesting, And that's one thing with the Marvel movies is there's been very few times when I've been like, ooh, that's a ropey special effect. Like, oh, that looks like a set.
And we did not talk about the final post-credit scene where Jane gets her happy ending in Valhalla.
Oh yeah,
And we get
yeah.
to see Black James
Heimdall.
Bond. Heimdall, yeah.
Yeah, with the dreads and stuff. Yeah, that was kind of cool. That was kind of a nice little like, hey, you deserve to be here kind of
Yes.
thing. Uh, you know, I don't know whether that means, like you said, they're gonna use that to bring her back or not. I
Probably
think,
not. Yeah.
dead is dead. Um, and it was nice that they got him to come back because it's kind of nice. Like if you go to Valhalla, somebody comes to visit you and says like, "Hey, welcome." I think that's a nice, nice little touch. And I don't really know who else could have done. I mean, I suppose Thor's mom could have, but
Right. Renee Russo.
yeah.
She was
But
around.
Heimdall's cool. I like Heimdall.
What do you think of Sif coming back for like 5 minutes to get her arm chopped off?
I would have liked more Sif. I always liked the character. In fact, I remember when I watched like the first movie, I was like, she seems much more like a suitable girlfriend for Thor,
Yes.
and he's just sort of blind to like her lusting after him. But it was cool that they managed to bring her back. What I'm curious about is supposedly they shot scenes with Jeff Goldblum and the
Peter Dinklage.
Peter Dinklage, and I think one other person, but I don't know who. And I'm curious, how did that work? Like, how does
Yeah.
where would unless they were like, I mean, like, I guess yeah, I don't know where they fit into the story.
Well, at this point in history, Jeff Goldblum fits anywhere he damn wants.
Right, but like, I mean, what does he turn up in Asgard as like a tourist guide or something? I don't, working the piano bar maybe. I don't know.
Hey, that'll work.
They actually, now that I've said that would actually work. Like if they'd shot a scene of, Jeff
Maybe
Goldblum.
someone Gore suspected to be a god, but doesn't kill him because he just finds out he's an idiot. Because Christian Bale said he shot scenes with both of them, but they didn't make it to the final cut. I really hope they're in the extras.
I don't know. I know that Taika has said there is no director's cut and that those scenes are cut.
Right, but they always put the deleted scenes out if they're,
hope so.
Good. Yeah,
I don't know if they put those up on Disney Plus though.
Yeah, I don't know that they do.
I don't remember ever seeing anything like that up on.
But this is, I'll buy this one digitally. I like it enough to, and I like Taika's stuff. All is forgiven for that piece of shit Green Lantern movie you were in, Taika.
Well,
absolutely.
Okay. In his defense, he was merely acting in it. He had no creative control. And let's be honest, we didn't know who he was at the time.
We did not.
Wasn't Taika at that point.
He was a New Zealand guy playing an Alaskan character with a racist nickname because his character was called Pie Face in the comics, which is just horrible. Now we know that now.
Yes. Yeah. Do you watch his pirate show?
Oh my God, I love that show because I love Rhys Darby as well.
Right.
And I was not. That one really surprised me. I was not. For anyone, do you watch it? I don't want to spoil it.
I haven't watched it yet, so.
It's as funny as I expected, but there's a huge aspect of it that I was not expecting at all. And it's delightful.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about because I just interviewed an author who is of that persuasion, and their book was very influenced by...
You do know what I'm talking about, then?
Yes.
Highly recommended. Our Flag Means Death is the show on HBO.
Yeah.
If you want more quirky New Zealand humor although Rhys Darby, I think, is Australian, if I remember correctly. So you have that whole oceanic humor going on there.
Yeah. And it's funny because I had no interest in that show because I'm not a big pirate person.
I'm not either.
But after the author told me this stuff about the show, I was like,
I think it's great.
That sounds more interesting.
Zach Morris turned me on to Severance on Apple TV Plus, which another one that caught me by surprise. tremendous quality in that show.
I always confuse that and the one on HBO about the dickhead family.
Oh yeah. Succession. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so wrap up. You got your 2-minute review in. Give closing thoughts on Thor: Love and Thunder.
I think that if you liked Ragnarok, you will, and Guardians of the Galaxy, and to a lesser extent Ant-Man, that you will like this movie. I think if you find those Marvel movies to be annoying, you're gonna be really annoyed by this one. Yeah, that's about all I can say.
For me, it is good, silly, God fun.
Yeah.
And I will watch this movie again and again when it's on.
Yeah. When it's on TBS 800 times, I will watch it in the background. In much the same way I've watched the end of Endgame like 500 times and still get verklempt when this stuff happens. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, which is weird, but okay.
If you want to read more of Paul's excellent thoughts, he covers a lot of great books, does some fantastic interviews, game reviews, of course. Go to paulsemel.com. If you want to drop Paul a line, ask him some questions, get some sandwich recommendations. If you're ever eating in LA,
yes,
ask Paul for recommendations. But drop him a line on Twitter at Paul Semel. Follow me here on Twitter, YouTube, subscribe, like, and all that good stuff. And join me. We have 2 episodes going this weekend. Saturday, I'll be joined by Marcus Beer as we give our predictions for the 2022-2023 Premier League season. That's football, soccer, for people that don't watch it. And join me on Sunday, where my guest will be, it's you. Paul and I will be discussing Ms. Marvel on Sunday, 1 p.m. Hope you can join us. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.